General Motors' new CEO, Mary Barra, is facing her first crisis leading the company. More than 300 deaths have been connected to faulty airbags that did not deploy properly in 2 GM models. This as U.S. lawmakers press GM to answer why it's taken a decade for the company to address faulty ignition switches. This issue comes at a critical time for the company as it struggles to regain its credibility with consumers and strengthen its brand. Our next guest has more than 30 years' experience helping companies with critical changes and crises like this. Keith Wyche is best-selling author and executive consultant who has worked with companies as big as IBM, AT&T, and Ameritech. Keith, good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
I want to start by the General Motors thing. I don't think they're handling this all that well because they're starting to blame the old GM. And it's the same people at the old GM as it is the new GM. What do they need to do here?
Well, the first thing you always have to do is protect the brand, and that's what they're trying to do. But the thing that they're slacking a little bit is owning it. You have to own it. There's no room for finger pointing, and you have to own it. And this is a great opportunity for her to really take a leadership role here and say, you know what, this is on my watch. I own it. Here's the plan to fix it. And don't be afraid to bring in outsiders to help. I think she's reached out and got legal counsel from outside to lead an internal investigation. But you got to get in front of it, and you've got to communicate effectively. You can't hide from the camera, but at the same time, you don't want to go out with information that's not necessarily baked.
That's right. You got to communicate effectively. You've got to tell the public that you have a plan.
Yes.
And basically, it's our fault. We have a plan. Here it is. They haven't really done that yet.
They haven't done that, and you have to say, here's my plan. Here's going to be the checkpoints where I'll give you communication as to how we're going against that plan. And when it's all said and done, we'll tell you why that won't happen again. You have to give a sense of security to the public that, one, the wheels fell off, but we know why they fell off, and here's how they won't happen again.
So, you know, you've dealt with crises at large corporations, and it seems to me that what happens when there's a crisis, and we saw this at Target, that they sit around a boardroom, and they all kind of yap and yap and yap, and then nothing really happens. Is that, you know, a problem in the United States with corporations, the way they act?
I think that's a little bit of a problem, but the reason I think it's that way is because they're so afraid to go out with misinformation. However, silence is deafening, and in the absence of information, people make up their own information, which is often worse than reality. And so it's almost better to go out and say, hey, we haven't had all the facts yet, but here's what we know, here's what we're doing right now. People need to know that you're at least making progress.
You have a book where you talk about how to coach executives, basically, into the proper ways in acting in the corner office and grasping these things. So what are the first things you sit down with an executive and you tell them? The
first thing I say is that your shadow is much bigger than you ever imagined. We live in social media 24/7, so everything you do, everything you say is really going to be in the public domain. That's the first thing. The second thing is you represent this organization. You no longer represent yourself or your family. And so, again, you have to be aware of what's happening.
You know, one of the things that I have become a big believer in is culture and a company. And culture really is set at the top levels. And you can look at Enron, and you can look at WorldCom, and you can look at Tyco. And people look at the leader and see what they're doing.
Absolutely. Whatever the leader allows is allowed. Whatever the leader rejects is rejected. And so it all rises and falls on leadership. And every company has their own culture. But to your point, it always starts at the top.
And what do you tell people then about how to shape that culture, especially when you need to change the boat?
The first thing I say, don't forget the people. It's all about the people. Yeah, I understand shareholders are important, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. Never forget the people. Treat them with respect, pay them well, and give them the leadership, and then get out of the way and let them do their jobs.
Do you think we're headed in the right direction of ethics in corporations in this country after the 2008 financial crisis and people not liking corporations, even though they're the ones who create jobs?
You know, I think we have this little treadmill that we're always trying to meet quarterly expectations for Wall Street.
Yeah. And they don't do that in Europe, by the way.
They don't. And so we're so penny wise and pound foolish that there are times we'll make decisions to make the quarter that could have long-term implications that really don't help.
Some of the toughest challenges you faced?
You know, for me, it's always cultural challenges. Understanding the culture, understanding the people I've worked with. I've moved industries a lot, and so you have to understand that the way it operates in the grocery industry is totally different than an IBM or Pitney Bowes, and so just making sure I understood the culture.
So when you're an outside consultant and you go in, how much time do you spend learning about the business, and is that important? Because businesses should all act in a certain way no matter what.
You learn about the business and you learn about the culture of that business, and then you try and figure out what are the issues that they're facing, and make sure you have honest dialogue with the leadership team about here's what we need to do to fix this.
And so what's next now for GM in the last minute or so that they need to do?
I think what they need to do is really come public with a plan, articulate that plan, give the confidence that, hey, we are on top of this and we will fix this.
Keith Wyche, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure talking to you. Finally this week, our Johnny Ritchie, who is on the crew here at Arise Exchange, debuted with a new band at New York's famous Rockwood Music Hall last night. Billy Woodward and the Retributions played their interpretation of early rock and rhythm and blues, with Billy singing and Johnny on lead guitar. We leave you with a clip shot by Marvin McLean, also from Arise. Have a good weekend, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz.
Starts to fall apart and you wish you knew why. 'Cause I started to change, said I was acting strange in my not to wear had made me